welcome. This is the Electronic Music Makers video podcast, show number 1.
Yes.
And I'm Chris Huelsbeck with my co-host, Amy Lee.
Hi.
And so we just had the pre-show a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, we did. And we got to, what did we do in it?
We had a little bit more extensive bios. If you want to know what we're doing, check out the pre-show. That goes really into detail.
Chris did a demo of the TonePad Pro.
Little product demo, and so that's that.
So if you haven't watched it, you should definitely go check it out. But why don't we do a quick introduction? So you're Chris?
Yes, Chris Huelsbeck. I'm a video game composer. Done this for over 25 years, and I'm a big electronic music enthusiast. You know, play with synthesizers and sequencer software and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I'm Amy Lee. I'm more of a music enthusiast. I play with synthesizers, do a lot of iPad and iPhone kind of like music generation. And we thought we'd put together this Electronic Music Makers podcast to bring you the most interesting things that we think are going on in the world of apps and technology and other cool things. Yeah.
So let's go right into some news.
Yes.
A couple of weeks ago there was the NAMM show, which is one of the largest trade shows for music and musical instruments, electronics and all that stuff going on down in Anaheim.
Yes.
And there's extensive coverage on the internet about it. So we don't need to go into details here, but check out sites like Harmony Central, Sonic State and Music Radar. You can find those if you just Google them. And they have like the whole show coverage with videos and product reviews and everything.
Lots of interviews too. I spent this entire morning in bed just like watching all the coverage from this thing. It's amazing the stuff that's coming out.
An interview is the right cue because we have a guest today.
Yes, from BitShape Software.
BitShape, Kevin Shlei.
Yes.
And we're going to talk over Skype with him. And he's going to introduce his new iPad performance synthesizer, a TC-1, a multi-touch performance.
TC-11.
TC-11.
Yes. So. All right, so let's go to the interview.
And we have our first guest, Kevin Shlei from BitShape. And he's going to talk about his iPad synth TC-11.
Hi, Chris. It's great to be here.
Nice to see you. So, Kevin, what can you tell us about your background and education? How did you get into this whole thing?
Sure. I started a long time ago. As a kid, I was into keyboards, which then worked into computers. I would work with sequencing software. I think I started with Music Shop and Studio Vision Pro from Opcode many years ago. And then when I went to school, I studied composition at Lawrence University, and then I transferred to UWM because of their strong electronic music program. It was just something that really captured me. After that, I did my master's at UWM, and I've been teaching there ever since. So that's the short version.
That's impressive.
No, thank you.
And so I bet at your university you have all kinds of projects relating to electronic music and controllers and stuff like that.
Absolutely. It's a big part of our work here is we research different methods of control, sound generation, and then performance practices and controllers. So we're always trying to find some new way to interact with sound and engage with all of the music software we have and hardware interfaces. It's a big part of what we do here.
Have you actually contact to like that Berkeley group that does this stuff? I don't remember the name of that professor, but he showed off some pretty interesting stuff a while ago. Or that the Stanford, I mean, this is like the West Coast stuff here around San Francisco.
Oh, sure. We definitely have a link with Stanford. One of our professors here, Chris Burns, comes from Stanford, and we're very much in kind of line with the same types of research. You know, but each one of us kind of pursues our own thing, and this is how I came to start looking at multi-touch. it just kind of caught my attention.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you're actually, are you a musician? I mean, are you performing on stage as a band or as a one-man person and stuff like that?
Most of the performances that I've done recently have been as a laptop performer. We have a group here called Milo, the Milwaukee Laptop Orchestra. That's both a faculty and student group, and we're improvisation based, and we let our members bring whatever they, whatever interfaces and sound generation sources they have to the table, and we make we collectively make some fun noise. So we do performances around town here, and then I also work with a couple of local artists, and we work on our own compositions, and we perform those too. But it's mostly electronic stuff, laptop-based and now iPad-based.
Awesome. So you got some music on YouTube as well to check out, or?
Sure, I have a Vimeo page that you can check out some of my work, and I've got a backlog of some videos to throw up there with some performances with some other artists.
Wow, cool. So, well, tell us a little bit more about the TC-11, I guess. What's the name for, and how did you get the idea, and what did you want to achieve with it?
Sure. Well, I'll start with the name. The TC stands for touch control. It was the code name for the app as I was working on it, and that just kind of got rolled into it. I thought it was nice. The 11 stands for the number of touches that you can get on an iPad simultaneously. So I figured it was a nice pairing. And it's also a kind of homage to, the old synth names that you'd get out of Japan, the TX7 or MS-20, something like that. And I thought, why not? This is just my way of kind of nodding to those old names. As far as the app goes, the idea really is to find out what makes multi-touch so much fun, why we like multi-touch as an interface. And to do that, I wanted to directly connect the things you do with multi-touch to the synthesis. And another way to put that is, instead of using multi-touch to interact with on-screen objects, sliders and buttons and knobs and kind of familiar interface elements, I wanted to strip all of that away and just say that the multi-touch itself is the controller. And so to do that, I had to find out what you can get out of multi-touch. And that's where all of the controllers that you see, these relationships between the touch, kind of emerged. How much data can I squeeze from the touches that you put on the screen? So that was a focus of my research for a while. And when I found the iPad interface, it was just a great opportunity to put control, sound engine, and interface together in one spot, instead of spreading it out over a few different apps and softwares that you'd have to kind of connect together. It was a great way to put it all together, and so that's when I turned my attention that way.
Awesome. Did you want to say something about it?
I found it really easy to make these wonderful, sweeping, gorgeous sounds. And all you had to do was just touch it in a couple of places, and as you spread your fingers apart, it actually totally changes the timbre, and it's a great visual performance instrument.
Sure.
What was some of the most fun moments that you had when you were actually discovering this app is actually working, I can actually use this in a performance? Right.
Well, you hit on the biggest part about this, which is when you move the touches around, you're creating this kind of collective that's different depending on the motion that you make and the shape that you create with these touches. And the most exciting part is you're controlling lots of things simultaneously, but with a very simple interface. And I like to think about how analog instruments work. Like a violin has some very simple interface elements with the fingers on the fretboard and the bow, but there are so many things at work. There's the pressure and the speed of the bow and the pressure of the finger, and all of these things play together to make an interesting and evolving sound. So the exciting part, the part that was really great about discovering this, was to start to add controllers on top of controllers on top of controllers, and then the interactions became that level of complexity. It started to approach, like you say, you make a small movement or a very simple gesture, but there's a complex result that happens, and that was really exciting to see some of that stuff happen with the interface.
Yeah, and it was so easy and intuitive. You just simply, like, one of the hardest things that I find when trying to use an iPad or an iPhone in some sort of a performance situation is you're constantly moving. You have to be able to, like, have the controller initially respond to you, but then you can't be having to, like, read things in the interface. You just want to kind of add some sort of gesture and have your gesture indicate what it is that you want the instrument to do. And I found
exactly.
Yeah.
You don't want to have separate control for all of these musical elements that we like to do in real time for volume and timbre and pitch. You want those all to be put together in a simple package. And so hopefully, as you experiment, and I hope people kind of try out some of the crazier, controllers and get away from the XY axis, which I find is the most boring thing about the interface. As the farther away you get from that, I think the more exciting kind of surprises you'll get in the results that happen.
That's wonderful.
That's very exciting. So I guess we'll show you a little bit of the synth in action. We have this YouTube video that you actually did, and that's your performance on stage, and I found that very interesting. And so we're going to look at that, and then maybe you can tell us a little bit about the features that you're using there.
Sure.
Okay, so you want to talk a little bit about the video?
Sure. So here you can see that I'm playing with the device motion of the iPad. So the way that you tilt and roll the device, it's changing, filters opening and closing. This is changing the FM rate of a synth patch. But really, it's a way to use the motion that performers are used to attack some of the synth parameters that make a difference in the sound. So here, this will actually, in this recorder section, this will change the vibrato, and it can also change the part of the scale that you're playing, so that it actually makes a difference. And it's one way that, aside from the touches that you make, you have further control over the patch as you play it.
Awesome.
That's great.
So one thing when I watched that video is that really interests me. How did you attach the iPad to your body like that?
Sure, I do get asked that a lot. It's a modified sleeve 360 case, which is normally meant to be worn on the hand. It's got a strap on the back of it. But I screwed in a wooden dowel to that back section, and then put some strap locks on the dowel, and then just used a regular guitar strap, and it works pretty well.
Yeah, that looked awesome.
I love the ingenuity of that.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen an iPad used on stage like that.
Well, every keyboardist secretly wants to be a guitarist, so we do what we can.
All right, so one thing that also struck me was that the audio output is very high quality, and it never glitches. At least when I tried it out, it was always like really clean and just what you want to hear, not anything glitchy or bad. So I assume there's like high-end algorithms that you're using in the background. Can you tell us a little bit about your programming stuff?
Sure. So a lot of work went into optimizing this for the iPad. I originally had planned to have 11 simultaneous voices. That had to be scaled back to 8. So the processor could, sink its teeth into it. And the other big issue was latency. There's a surprising amount of latency for the touches that you make. But because it's the capacitive screen, we actually feel like it's faster than it is. But at the same time, lots of work had to go into kind of shrinking down a lot of the synth objects into their most optimized form, so it could be nice and responsive. Because if it's not responsive, you really can't play it, in an ensemble, in a group. So there you go. A lot of work into the optimization side so it can run smoothly on the iPad.
Right. So is it actually running on the iPad 1 or only on the iPad 2?
Yeah, I've got it running on the iPad 1. Surprisingly, it's the audio calculation is fairly smooth, but the iPad 1 doesn't have the graphics hardware that the iPad 2 does. So when TC-11 actually pushes the graphics onto a background thread, it takes second place to the audio calculation because we need to make sure that no samples get dropped while you're playing. So on the iPad 1, you'll definitely see a much slower response in the graphics. But hopefully still have that really high responsiveness and crispness of playing the instrument as far as the audio goes.
Cool. So how long was the development time for this thing?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. I've been doing multi-touch research, and the algorithms that go into categorizing and sending off the multi-touch messages dates about 2 years of work. And then I did a few other apps to learn iOS programming. I did Invisible Drum Set and Gyro SC, and that was kind of a way to get my feet wet in the development environment. And then I jumped into TC-11 January of 2011, so it was about a year of development.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. So what are your plans for the future for this? I assume there's going to be an update sometime in the future?
Yep, we just had an update today, so there's live preview as you edit the patch. It's been a feature that I've been itching to get in there. It's going to make patch editing a lot easier. I have I have lots of user requests. I'm really learning what the iOS community is looking for. I'm kind of a dinosaur, and then I still make music on a laptop. So I'm learning what the features are that are important to the community, and a few of those came out. The recording and audio copy were important, live patch preview, sequencer values in beats per minute. So a few of these things have come from the community. Lots of people want MIDI sync. They want control in and out of TC-11. And so I'm looking into these. I'm seeing how I can integrate MIDI because I'm a control freak just like everybody else, and I think it'd be fantastic to kind of merge these two worlds. I also want sample-based objects to include that. I'm really excited about that. And it's all coming, but just a little bit down the road.
Cool.
Excellent.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being on the show. And
yeah, absolutely.
I hope to have you in the future again when there's exciting new stuff. And thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so now we're coming to our segment of a mini product spotlight. And Amy, you got something for today?
Yeah, I have this really cool synthesizer application that I just heard about. It's called Sunrizer, so I'd like to give you a quick demo of it. Firing it up, it looks like pretty much any sort of like a normal synthesizer. You have a couple of oscillators, a bunch of filters. It has a bunch of really, really simple things. Now, one of the things that that really is interesting is that it happens to have chord features. It has this kind of like switch between A and B. It also has this audio background thing, which I'll go over in just a second. I like it just because it's a really easy way to create some very rich sounding chord tones. For example, just straight out of the box, it creates this wonderful, like bright, rich kind of like pad texture. Let's go down an octave.
That's beautiful.
Now, you notice that there's a whole bunch of overtones in there, and then one of the reasons is because this chord button is down. If I just simply take that off, now it's doing just a normal chord. A single note instead of enabling the chord, and now you get that's so cool. It makes a lot of like very complex things very simple. Now here's the patch browser, and you can see here that there's multiple different categories of patches. So if, let's say I just want to search for leads, I can tap on the lead button, and that automatically sorted things by lead. Maybe I want something that's a little more on the bright side, so here's like a power chord. See how this thing sounds. Really nice and rich and thick. Let's go and check out some of the other sounds here. We have like ARP sounds. The Arpeggiator, and this is really kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and just pick a random one, like a rainbow. I'll go into the ARP edit mode, and you can see here we have a 7-step ARP. And I know it's kind of hard to see from the video itself, but each of these are arpeggio steps indicates what it's going to do with a particular note that you're holding down or series of notes that you're holding down. So I'm just going to play a C chord. And you can spread it out. It's a really kind of like simple, easy way to do something. And actually this is even only using one of the particular tones. And it makes things really nice when you can set up for a performance aspect. Now, one of the other things I'd really like to show off here, if I can go and find something that, well, let's find something kind of cool, like this synchro lead. This ought to be really nice and punchy. Let's go and hit this audio BKG button. So it puts this application into sort of a background mode. So if you notice that I'm leaving the application, I can still play with it. Well, one of the interesting things you can do with that is, let's say you happen to have 2 audio applications. You know, this is one of the real strengths that I see with the iPad, is being able to run all these applications together and having all these audio channels hooked up together. So what I have here is I'm jumped over to the Korg Electribe application, and I'm going to go ahead and play this. Now in the background, the Sunrizer app is still playing. So now you basically have your own band. I mean, you can even play.
So
that's
really
the Sunrizer.
Cool. Thank you. And I'm also seeing you're using a hardware keyboard here, which I hadn't seen before on the iPads. That's really cool. How's that working?
This is the Akai Lpk25, and it's USB powered. But one of the fun things you can do with the iOS hardware, like the iPad and the iPhone, is you can use the camera kit. And the camera kit itself has the USB. So you just simply connect the USB. Wow,
so that is essentially like just an add-on USB port for the iPad.
It totally is. And it just makes it so simple and easy. And
now, does that work with any audio app, or are there some limitations?
There in fact are some limitations. I mean, I think it has to support core MIDI, which is really sort of technical geeky speak for, it has to support a particular protocol for transmitting the note data that you get off these controllers, because the controllers really don't have any sound generation capabilities. They just send what note and what velocity you want to play. They send that into an application such as the Sunrizer. But that's all it is. I mean,
now obviously you can use the onboard keyboard for the Sunrizer app, but you couldn't play that along with the Electribe, because when you're in the other app, the keyboard's not visible.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that's why using a hardware keyboard, and that's what makes all the difference here.
Absolutely.
But that's really cool. So that could be really used by somebody as a performance thing. They could like set up an arrangement in the Electribe and then play over it and
definitely
fun with it.
Definitely,
that's
definitely,
cool.
definitely.
Thank you.
Well,
wow.
thank you. That was fun.